So, welcome to our first episode of Sacred Space. I'm here with Dr. Divi Chandna, who I met just a year ago. You have been such an inspiration to me. I think your story is what impacted me first. For those who don't know you, aren't familiar with you, tell me a little bit about your background. First, not just as a doctor, but just as a person.
Sure. East Indian family, immigrant family. My parents immigrated a few years before I was born. All four of my siblings, there's four of us, are all doctors of some sort. So there was no question to be something, a physician or a PhD. Did that relatively young because I'm the youngest of the four. So I kind of had the pathway passed out for me. Um, Became a physician quite young, got quite sick, went into alternative work, specifically at the time, yoga and meditation into my early 30s, which before yoga was yoga. It's actually right before Lululemon launched. So we're talking a while ago. And then that led me into my current work, which is intuitive spiritual teaching and helping people to heal women, men, a lot of women, and yeah, heal their stories and feel better and more alive and more aligned with who they truly are.
What was that process like of, being in a field which is so left brain and
Yeah.
logical, and then finding that ability to listen to that voice within your higher self?
It was gradual. So I left medicine to enter yoga for about a decade and ran yoga studios. It was gradual. It wasn't overnight, but medicine is great. Like Western medicine is great, but it has its limitations. And almost every physician experiences that within the first few years of working. We only know so much, which is great. But I think when I entered this world and listened to my gut feeling, in fact, I think almost every doctor listens to their gut feeling, every lawyer does, every profession does.
Hmm.
But then really waking it up to the level I have has been just a huge expansion to a different world, but a world I think that more and more people are hungry for, and a world that I think medicine, Western medicine, wants to include but is afraid to include. So I think the balance of the two is kind of where healthcare is heading at some point. I'd like to think.
Interesting,
So
like a more holistic approach.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I've had so many conversations with doctors specifically who are transitioning maybe a little bit out of that practical practice
Yeah.
itself and going into a space that's a little bit more guided by energy and by intuition. So it's a beautiful thing to see you kind of guiding the way on this. And I think, like you said, people are hungry for this right now. What a time to be alive. The world,
Agree. Agree.
like, if you were to describe this time period that we're in right now, I know a lot of people in the spiritual community will call it different things, but what do
Right.
you call it?
I think I would describe it as a waking up, which has been a common word people use, a rise in consciousness, a rise in the feminine, and that's how I would describe it. Many different words.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And, we see it play out in the world in so many different ways right now. Like, if you look at just a geopolitical situation, I think you see the extremes that are kind of playing
yeah,
out right now.
yeah,
And I think especially when I tell people that I've been really involved in the spiritual world or whatever you want to call it, listening to my own voice and connecting with my intuition, that sometimes it almost is chalked off as being a reaction or an avoidance to what's going on
right.
instead of a response.
Mm.
Because I truly believe that going inwards, doing the healing work, is what our world needs right now. Why would you say that that work going in and having that mind body soul connection is so important?
It's a great question. So when this is being recorded, there's a heightened war right now happening in Iran. There's lots of crazy stuff happening around the world. And so if you're listening to this in 5 years, that's what's happening right now. And wars have always been on the planet, but the wars, like the way we're going to stop war, the way we're going to stop this craziness is that for each of us to look within ourselves and get to know who we are on a deeper level inward, not just in our body, not just in our mind, but on the soul level. Because when we start doing that, then the next step is we see each other as souls. Then we stop being angry at each other. Then we stop taking judgment of each other. And the more of us that do that as a trickle effect, rises consciousness, rises money, decreases poverty increases health. So it's not, I agree with you, it's not reaction. It's like truly like this is how to heal the world by going inward and truly loving inside so we can learn to love outside.
Hmm. And it has not been an easy road. I mean, looking within and taking ownership of your own shadow and doing that work, um, it can be very jarring, I guess, at sometimes. But it is so needed, and I think that this time has also been so anticipated. It's been talked about for millennia.
100%.
Um, how would you say is the best way to go inwards if someone is completely new to this world? Maybe they're looking at what's happening on the news or whatever, and they're feeling fearful.
Great question. It really is give yourself permission to slow down, which is really hard when you first start. Give yourself permission to take your phone off. Give yourself permission to take a day off of work. Give yourself permission to just get quiet between the ears. And then if you're ready to go further, potentially start journaling. What are your thoughts? Don't just let them run in your head. The other thing I would add to that is almost everyone's addicted to something, whether it be food, TV, the internet. Decrease that so you can start to hear the inner chatter. And to piggyback what you just said, the work is hard and no one would lie to you about that. But not doing the work is equally as hard. It's actually, I think, not doing the work is harder.
Mm-hmm.
Like living a life where there's constant ups and downs, you're constantly fighting with your partner, you're constantly looking for more money, you're constantly in lawsuits and blaming, and constantly sick. Is that lifestyle? Or go inwards. And going inwards is hard.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, and a short period of time, you actually feel better.
Mm-hmm.
You feel more joyful, you feel more hopeful, your relationships get better. You stop suing people.
You're able to look at things through a different lens, a different perspective. Like I would kind of describe it as almost like a bird's eye view.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I will look at a situation without and take myself out of it,
Yeah.
and the larger dynamics and the energy that's at play. Um, I also want to talk to you a little bit about something that you've been dealing with right now. And I know that you've shared about it on social media, but you've been dealing with vision loss. Can you tell me how you've been navigating that?
Sure, it's actually a fair amount better. I'd say it's like 80-90% better. So thank you for asking. I lost my vision in my left eye about 2 months ago. It was a retinal detachment. That was the diagnosis. The downside of being a physician is we self-diagnose. So I self-diagnosed it for about a week before I kind of went in and got looked at. And I was really blessed because the surgeon was great. I had a couple of procedures done. But really for me, it was like, yes, the procedures were something I chose to do. I couldn't see anything out of my left eye. And essentially the procedures plus looking inward as to why it's occurring, what's the thought, emotions that are connected to it. So I'll keep going since you asked. There's work, Louise Hay's work, there's new German medicine, there's different modalities out there that if you Google new German medicine, Louise Hay, plus your illness, you can get an idea of what the mental, emotional, spiritual component is. So if I'll go a bit deeper. So it talks about in new German medicine that prior to the detachment occurring, there was a heightened emotional stress that you were holding your breath, and then it just occurred. And that's odd for me because I'm very emotionally aware. It's what I do for work. And I sat with it going, what was it? And about 2 months prior to it being detached, I'd gone home to see my parents. They're quite sick. And given how far we live from each other, I don't see them that often. And so watching them deteriorate like broke my heart. But it didn't even just break my heart. I had this internal sense of guilt that I should have done more for them. And that got lodged in my system. And when you start to understand the causes of things like a detachment or really any illness, that one specifically is you have a childhood energy that's stuck in your body. And for me, I was always busy taking care of my dad emotionally and mentally. So seeing him now struggle broke me. And then I felt this internal sense of guilt that I hadn't done enough as a child. And so I didn't get to that overnight. I had to unpack what the emotions were. And you've hit the emotions, you won't stop crying. When you hit the emotions, like, oh, that's what it is. And so then I have been looking at that piece and healing that piece. So it's my long story.
Wow, that must have been, I mean, really difficult because even though, like you said, you've been doing the work to understand all of this, there must have been a moment where maybe you kind of revert back a little bit to your old self. Like, why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? How did you make sense of that?
Interesting. I didn't do that, which is, I think it's just the phase of journey I'm in right now. My son happened to be home. My son is 21. He was home, and he's not normally home. He goes to university. But he was home skiing that weekend, and I hadn't planned on telling him. I was like, I'm not going to tell him. But he happened to be getting picked up from the bus at the same time my husband was driving me to my surgery. So it was like we had to tell him, right?
Mm.
And my son lost it. He was sad and anxious and worried. And I just looked at him and I said, "Hon, this is part of my journey. It's part of what I do for work. It's part of my journey. I'm not scared. I'll be fine. I don't know what's happened to my vision." But there was almost like a surrendering. I
Mm.
think just the point of my journey I'm in right now is I just think everything is part of that journey of up leveling consciousness. So yeah, so I didn't go through that phase because it was more of just a surrender, I guess.
And I think because you also already had that understanding, right? That life isn't happening to me, it's happening for me. And that anything even viewed as a setback really is for your greatest good in the long run. What would you say to people who might be navigating an issue like that right now in their own lives and maybe they're struggling to look at it from that perspective?
Great question. Try to not see yourself as a victim, because there's an expression in the work I do that says, I'm not a victim to the world. I'm not a victim to the world I see it. And the second thought that most people have heard of is, I create my reality. Most of us have heard of that. It feels great when you're trying to create a lovely business or a lovely life, but it sucks when a setback occurs. So how you don't take ownership for that is you have to recognize you have conscious, subconscious, and unconscious beliefs. The unconscious belief that I'm responsible for my father came from my mother, right? And came from that hereditary of being Indian and being female. So it was like I was handed that on a silver platter when I was born, right? And so I don't blame my mother. I don't blame my father. I don't blame myself. But it's like, okay, I had that thought in me and I have to heal that thought. And it's funny because I shared that at a workshop I taught recently, and 80% of the women put their hand up that they have that same belief. That they're responsible for their husband, they're responsible for their kids, they're responsible for their partners, they're responsible for their father or mother. So it's something that a lot of women have, that I'm responsible for another. It's almost like my life depends on it. So going back to your question, how to navigate it. If you're having something horrible happen, recognize that most likely it was a subconscious, unconscious thought that you were taught, and that it's occurring for you to heal and shift it, which is possible, which is why you're listening to this podcast.
Mm.
So you're not in the victim energy, but in the potential energy of what's possible.
Mm.
So.
That's beautiful. And I think can give a lot of hope to people as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you mentioned you just did a recent workshop, and I had the pleasure of joining you for one in the fall, just a few months back, and it was pivotal for me. It was an intuitive workshop and a 4-day intuitive retreat, and I think what I realized during that time is that I've actually always been living intuitively, and I didn't know that's what it was called. What does intuitive living mean to you?
Is listening to your inner guidance. Maybe not all the time, but as often as you can. And the more you listen to your inner guidance, the more you're connected to the divine nature of who you are.
Mm.
And it's either living from that or living from fear. Fear is what we're taught, what society teaches us. So it's like living from love or living from fear.
Mm. And we did an experiment that day, one of the days, and I have to say it was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had, like in real life. And maybe you can explain to everyone what it was. It was the love experiment, or the maybe that's what I call it.
Okay, I don't remember which one it was.
All right, so there was a room of about 30 people, and one by one, this was near the end of the retreat.
Right. Yeah.
We all went up to the front of the room.
Yeah.
And we took a moment to look around the room and receive love from everyone. So, while others were standing up, I was sending them love. It was so moving, so beautiful, and it was so eye opening to see how different everyone's reaction was, from crying, letting it all out, to really loving it. What does that tell you about our experience with love and the ability to receive it?
It's real. I forgot about that exercise. It's one of my favorite ones. Um, I think a lot of what it tells a lot of things. One of the people who really struggled with it, which to be honest was including me, we struggle receiving love. At a lot of senses, we have no problem giving love, but we struggle receiving. either because we don't believe we deserve it, we, what I didn't do anything to get this, and the list goes on and on. And then some people really loved it, which was beautiful too. And some people they never get it. Like there's so many different factors, right? People often don't feel unconditional love.
Mm.
And in my retreats, generally that's the theme that people experience is the sensation of deep unconditional love because my work is more on the spiritual level of your soul and your divinity. So yeah, it was a fun exercise. Yeah.
And I have to share what my reaction
I
was
don't remember.
because I surprised myself. So it's so funny. I came home and I told my husband about it. I was like, we did this amazing thing, and I stood up at the front of the room, and when I got there and I looked around at everybody, I just felt at home. I felt so alive. I just like I have chills from head to toe right now because at the same time that I was receiving that love from everyone, I was also giving it back, and it felt so much like a cord connecting each one of us in that room. And I think what happened was my time was up. And I said, no, I'm not done yet. I need more love, please. So I told my husband about that. He was quite surprised. He was like, no, you guaranteed you were the one that was bawling your eyes. I was like, no. And I had to sit with that. I'm like, what does that say about me? I don't know what that says about me.
The intuitive hit I got just now on it was like not just those people, but you found your people. Like it's this feeling of coming home. That's one part. The other part is it was the experience of the law of one, that I am you and you are me. Whereas like, oh, coming home and that feeling of the law of one where you're not alone or separate is really all encompassing of finally. It's like I've been waiting to feel this my whole life. That I'm not separate from you, you're not separate from me.
Yeah, and honestly, like I remember going home and wishing that everyone could feel that. And it's possible, but we all put up these barriers sometimes, or we're guarded. Is there, are there ways to open that up, open up that receiving? I mean, you said you even had difficulty with it. What's helped you soften that?
It's one of the biggest things is not seeing yourself as a body, as cuckoo as that might sound. It's like this never ending, everybody wants love and everyone wants to receive love. So in order to give, I have to receive. So it's that double, that give and take. Um, and I agree with you. I actually think that everybody not only wants to wake up their intuition, but they want to feel that love is safe. So what I would say to somebody listening to this is the biggest thing is to take down our walls. This wall of deserving, this wall of not feeling safe, this wall of fearing love. And the more we take the walls down, the more we can give and receive with ease.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and I know that one of your other focuses right now is the Divine Mother and opening up our connection to the Divine Mother. Why, I guess, how would you define Divine Mother for those that are listening, and what does that mean to you?
Sure. So in our society, when we look at religions and spirituality, a lot of it is very masculine focused, and that's fine. We have archetypes like Jesus and Buddha, Muhammad, all which are masculine, which is fine. But there's another energy called the Divine Mother, and not all religions have her. Hinduism, which is the religion I come from, has her prominently. But the Divine Mother represents the energy of unconditional love. Almost every human I've met has a mother wound, including my son. Almost everyone has a mother wound. You have to, because your mother is the first person you meet, and you hope she gives you unconditional love because you're on this planet going, what am I doing here as a little baby? And our mothers never give us unconditional love, no matter how we try. How we try. So the Divine Mother is the energy that can give us that unconditional love, who can see our pain, but the biggest thing, she doesn't believe our pain. And in spirituality, I'm sure some people listening to this are spiritual junkies and some are new. A lot of people in the spiritual realm look towards the masculine characters like the Jesus, like the Muhammad, like the Buddha, which are amazing, but there's missing of the feminine. And so the Divine Mother came to me a few years ago when I ironically was getting the hit to change business models. Ironically, I was going to stop teaching intuition. It's an ironic thing. And then she showed up and said, slow down teaching intuition, teach my work. And so I teach some intuition, but a lot of her work. So yeah, that's the Divine Mother to me.
What's the change that you've noticed in the people that you've been working with?
Don't laugh. I work with a lot of normal people now. That's a joke. Like
Who's normal?
exactly. I work with a lot of regular people who just want out of their pain, want out of their stories, and some who've meditated, some who haven't. Before I worked with a lot of already converted people who were already on the path, and now my my offerings have changed, and the people who are coming are changed, and they're some more newer to the path, have been on the path for a while, and it really helps them. I think working with the Divine Mother has really helped them to add a piece where they can unconditionally love themselves as well, which is I think what we all want.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know, it's are you noticing more people coming to you right now? Because you hear about the great awakening, that more and more people are waking up to higher levels of consciousness. We talked about it a little bit earlier. People define it in a lot of different ways, but are you noticing that in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I can't remember. I was emailing somebody yesterday who wanted something from me, and I said, listen, I just can't. I'm like overwhelmed right now with work. Um, Even though I slowed down doing one-to-one work, it's insane the number of people who are in pain right now. So yeah, I always find that when fear escalates, which it does, it goes in waves on the planet, like when COVID hit and all those things hit. It's like I get a lot busier because there's if whether or not you're scared because of what's happening in Iran right now, it's not that, it's the energy that people are feeling. And then people get fearful of their kids, they get fearful of their dog, they get fearful of money. And so then they come to me for shifting that, whether it be because of their health or other reasons. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can be a dark hole if you start spiraling down into that fear mindset. And it is interesting considering the work that I do in news, but really my faith, my spirituality has helped me keep a very level head and be able to look at the news of the day or the situation that's happening around the world, um, and understand the greater picture,
Right.
and the role that each one of us can play if we choose to.
Right.
And I believe that we do that by choosing love,
100%.
by rejecting fear. And I also think that right now we're also seeing a huge rise in technology. It is so difficult to know what's real, what's not.
Right.
And I feel the most important thing we can do, especially with the rise of AI, is to be more connected to our intuition than ever.
Totally.
How do you feel about
Oh,
that?
100%. 100%. AI is great. ChatGPT is amazing. Ironically, my brother works for the company, which is funny. And my brother and I could be no different, could be no more opposite than we are, which is fine. Um, but I have seen clients come to me after referring to ChatGPT for relationship advice.
Oh,
Do not turn to ChatGPT for relationship advice,
mm,
right? Like it's like there's almost a dehumanizing element to AI, and like all of our answers can be answered on there, which they can't. It was always meant to make your lives easier. Like if you're going somewhere, you need something to create a to-do list. ChatGPT knows me pretty well. Create my grocery list, make it easy. But it was not meant to replace human interaction.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we're seeing a tipping point, or the breaking point. I see amongst my son and his friends who's in his early 20s, they're not using it for that. They're using it just for like, get my homework done for me. But they're not using it for relationship advice. Like there's a knowing that this is ridiculous.
Okay.
Right? Which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. So
But it's also fear. It can be a little bit scary because you'll maybe you're on social media, you're scrolling something, and it looks credible, but maybe it's a deep fake. Is this real? Is this AI generated?
right.
And there is a moment where there's that feeling inside of you
Totally.
that's like something's off here,
Exactly.
and that's what we're talking about.
100%. We have to start listening to that.
So, how do people strengthen that? For if you are a newbie, you've never meditated, this is your first introduction to this kind of conversation, where should you start?
Okay. So your stomach will tell you yes and no's. Okay. So the classic is when your stomach clenches, it's a no. When your stomach relaxes, it's a yes. That's the way it is for the majority of humans. Okay. So start by doing little things like stand at a grocery store and say, okay, does my body want whole milk or oat milk? And you know what you like. Like, I like oat milk, but stand for the whole milk and pay attention and say, do I want whole milk? Like good old whole milk. And if you're even a little bit sensitive, you'll feel your stomach clench, and that's your no.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you stand for the oat milk, it'll say yes. And that was a simple example, but try with other things. You know, this might sound like a silly example, but it's how I first learned. Am I biologically female or male? and like ask your stomach and it will tell you yes or no, right? And if you, and it's, thing about intuition, it's never 100%. Okay, just really get that. But if you're like hitting 80%, 90%, oh my God, hit that as a basketball player, you're doing amazing. So don't expect 100. So don't get mad if it's like, but I would first start with your stomach, because everybody can speak to, okay, get my stomach grumbles. That's a great place to start. Pay attention to the goosebumps, pay attention to, synchronicities. The more you pay attention to that, the more your intuition is going to go up.
What do you think goosebumps are?
In my world, they're called your God bumps. So it's like spirit coming through you for this experience. Deep in the work I do, if you think of the creator, call it God, call it the divine, call it Allah, call it whatever you will. The creator created us to have the creator have an experience through the human. So when we have God bumps or goosebumps, it's like the creator's coming through us and he is having the experience of joy through us.
Is it almost like validation?
100%. You're on the right path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and synchronicities. I see repeating numbers all the time.
Love that. I love that.
Almost daily. It makes me very happy. There's other types of synchronicities, but what are some of the synchronicities that show up for you?
Like when you're driving somewhere and you're like, oh yeah, I kind of just knew I was going to be here. Or the other day I had an intuitive nudge that I was going to get invited to teach an event in New York. A client from New York messaged me and said, I want to put you in front of my whatever it's called, PhD thesis people. I want them to meet you, right? It's like you just trust those little, like, inner knowings and just throw them out there and see what happens, right? And just trust those things.
I've heard other people describe them as pings,
yes,
like a little kind of like this little lightning bolt that kind of goes off. But I think for a lot of people, it can be difficult to differentiate between, hey, what's me daydreaming and thinking, and what's an intuitive hit.
Great question. Intuitive hits come out of nowhere. They are repetitive and they're full of love. Okay, me thinking can be fear based. It doesn't come out of nowhere, and that's not repetitive, the same energy. And then if you start paying attention to things like goosebumps and things like that, other ones are you get in the car and a song comes on. The more you pay attention to those little things that happen all the time, the more you're opening up to the energetic field.
I'm laughing right now because I feel like that's my life. I feel like I'm just flowing and I get all these synchronicities and I'm like, check, check, check. I'm on the right path.
And that's beautiful. That's exactly it. I love that.
And I've been noticing, so one of my first, I guess, forays into the intuitive world was actually through my dream space.
Right.
Ever since I was a child, like probably around my teenagers is when it started. I started having really, really intuitive dreams, or very vivid dreams. I didn't know at the time that they were intuitive. As time has gone on, I've gotten messages from loved ones who have passed on, who frequently show up in my dreams. I've had very, very specific information from my grandmother come through one dream the day before I gave birth, giving me specific instructions of what to do when I got to the hospital.
Wow.
I took her advice and everything went great. But I remember waking up that morning being like, how do I explain this?
Yeah.
How do I explain this to anyone? I told my midwife about it and she was like head to toe goosebumps, like, wow. But it's hard to control, how and I know a lot of other people probably have messages that come through their dreams. For me, there's always a few distinctions between what's an intuitive dream and what's just a dream.
Sure.
Do you have intuitive dreams and do you notice a difference?
Not like that. I don't. That's fine. I get my hits a lot during the day. So no, I don't. But people who have those describe them as being very, very different. It's like there's a deep knowing that that was an intuitive dream and that wasn't. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What are you working on right now? What's lighting you up at the moment?
I've got 2 books on the fire. One's more health geared towards just average, like the regular person, how your health is connected to your thoughts, your emotions, then how to shift it. And I'm also working on a calendar. It's like a calendar, a 365-day, like one little thing to think about today kind of thing. Yeah, so I'm working on 2 projects right now, plus teaching.
Incredible. Yeah, the teaching. You're constantly doing, gatherings where you're bringing people together in the Metro Vancouver area to. I think you have one right now coming up that's from love to fear, or from fear to love, not the other way around.
Cute, yeah.
Do you see people transform in those moments?
Oh yeah. I mean, I do 1 day, 2 day, 3 day workshops. Oh God, yeah. People leave transformed on 1, 2, 5, 10 topics, whatever they're ready to shift. So yeah, depending on their readiness, yeah, everybody transforms. So yeah,
Hmm.
I'm blessed.
Incredible. The situation that we find ourselves in right now can feel very powerless,
Yeah.
or some people can feel very powerless. But I always like to tell people, you are so much more powerful than you understand. It's difficult though to hear it when you're in that dark space.
Right.
Well, what are some of the things that have helped you?
What the biggest one has been looking back at, we've all had bumps in our lives, whether it be a bad breakup, whether it be a bank account issue, whether it be a thing with your kid, and we come out the other side. And we have to remember contrast creates clarity. So when things happen that we don't like, we'll come out the other side. The second part to that is, I think a big problem that we run into in our society is we don't talk about spirituality at all. It's sort of like spirituality went to religion, and health went to science, and society, you just function. A big part, if you look at the olden days, and not even that olden days, but a lot of Eastern cultures, there's a strong belief that inside of each of us is the creator's energy,
Mm.
right? And you and I nod our head up and down
Well,
because
I nod my head up and down because that was just what I was taught
me too,
as a child.
me too.
And I was also, I grew up in a sick
Right.
household, but my parents are not super religious, and they were always very open to other religions and ways of being and spirituality. So I was always open to make my own choices. But I remember as a child asking my mom, "Where does God live?" And I remember her telling me, "Well, God lives in your heart. God is in your heart." And so I pictured a little man, a little man with a beard, sitting in my heart, cross-legged, going like this, because that was the imagery that I
Totally.
had seen.
Yeah.
But I completely, and I feel it, and I agree. We are all one. We all do have that bit of creation divinity in us. We are divinity.
And I think the majority of humans are not taught that. You and I were born in similar religions and different, similar cultural beliefs. And in India, that's very, in India, if you ever travel to India, I'm sure you have, like religion is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You can't turn a corner without seeing a temple, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the normal world, right? And so in North America, most of the people I grew up with didn't grow up with that belief that the divine was in you. And I think when we don't have that belief, it can feel like a very scary world. But not only is the divine in you, but the creator's in you. You can create with your thoughts and emotions, and it's a really powerful place to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in the slumps, know that there's a way out, know that the divine is leading you, and know that you are just being asked to go deeper into a growth.
Mm-hmm.
Like I shared with Maya, you're just asked to go deeper, and it's not as scary. And there's people who've done it before you, myself, yourself,
Mm-hmm.
other people. We're here to help and support. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say for me, when I first got involved in, or was introduced to the spiritual world, so to speak, was after I hit a rock bottom. I my first pregnancy ended in miscarriage, and it devastated my husband and I. I can still remember the moment that it happened, and the deep loss that I felt, and it was so hard to get out of that spiral for me. And it wasn't until 6 months later that I finally admitted that something was wrong, because I didn't want to deal with it. It was too painful to look at. But once I finally did look at it, I decided to go through to Reiki. There was a Reiki healer I knew, and she really helped me bring down the layers and remind me that I need to connect with my own intuition. That was the one message she kept bringing out to me. And over time, through those sessions, through that healing, that space of grief took up a lighter space in my body. Um, there was a lot of other things that happened at that time, but had that loss not happened, I wouldn't have understood how grateful, how how much gratitude I have for everything in my life, and how blessed I truly am. And the same goes for everybody, regardless of your situation. I'm not talking about economic factors or anything, but just the fact that you are living and breathing is enough to be thankful for. that shifted my entire mindset. I started meditating. I started learning about different healing modalities. I learned Reiki myself. I did my level 1 certification, and I've never really looked back. But I think it serves as a reminder that those darkest moments that you go through can actually bring you to your highest light.
Totally. And that's how it's created, for us to have contrast to create clarity. No one comes onto the planet without contrast. And I always jokingly use Prince William and Harry as examples. I mean, to the rest of the world, it's like, oh, you're born into the royal family. You must be lucky. But they had huge contrast, continue to have huge contrast. So contrast is what uplevels us as humans,
Mm-hmm.
if we allow it to.
I know you often get a lot of messages and hits
Yeah.
while we're sitting here.
Totally.
So I got to ask you, what's
Yeah.
coming through for you right now?
At the second, for the listeners or for you?
Either one, I'm open to
Okay,
both.
cool. The message is more for the listeners, but also for you and me, is to not give up hope, to keep going, to know that this is a level of divine upleveling for the whole planet, that we can't continue to live in fear and the dark ages. It's like the dark ages are done. I keep seeing like a burqa, like what Muslim women wear, being lifted off our faces.
A lifting of the veil.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. But yeah, a lifting of that. And that hope and joy lies in our heart if we would be willing to see it and feel it. And if you're blessed to listen to this podcast, there's a reason for it. And for you, if you want something personal, it's like, yes, just continue to have fun and you're on the right path, and let this grow you exponentially. Ironically, before I came here, I was like visualizing this podcast. I didn't know. So it's such a beautiful room, but I kept seeing she's meant to be big on the podcast circuit, whatever that means. And I don't know what that means. So I don't know what the
Hallelujah.
I don't know what the podcast circuit means. But that's what I heard very loudly. Like, she's meant to grow this to a business, because not just her, but it's not just her reputation, but she's so good at what she does and she impacts a lot of people. So, and I didn't know how to tell you that, but I heard that before I came here.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much for that message. I sat in this room and I didn't meditate for quite as long as I would have liked to, but I still got one in before you got here. And I could just feel the presence of my ancestors, my grandfathers, my grandmothers, almost like their hands on my shoulder, like all crowded behind me. And it was such a beautiful, comforting, and validating experience. And every time I go inwards, I'm always amazed at what I find or what comes up. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. Um, I want to go a little bit deeper into what we were talking about earlier about this great awakening.
Sure.
Because the other part of this is that there is a timeline splitting as well. Right. That there is the new earth and the old earth. And I would probably define the splitting as like either you follow love or you follow fear. Which are you guided by? Do you agree? Do you see a timeline splitting? How would you define this?
I've never heard the word timeline splitting. I agree with the fear love. I'd also add to that, and everyone knows this is the shift out of patriarchy. That's not about men, but it's just a shift of lifting our veil to see each other as the same, as equal, as equally as amazing. Yeah.
So I would say. Let's unpack the matriarchy part, because I have I've seen a lot about it on social media. It speaks to me because it's not a contrast, or it's not the opposite of patriarchy. No. It is more, how would you describe it? I'll shut up now.
Yeah, it's inequality. It's not one over another. It's recognizing what the feminine brings and what the masculine brings, and seeing them as both divine. So the feminine brings, even though we think men make money, that's sort of old traditional. The feminine, the word matter, so this chair, this microphone, matter comes from the root word mater, which is mother. Feminine is creation. I mean, you've had babies. I've had a baby, right? That's creation. And it's not like men don't create, but men don't have to create the old fashioned hard way. It's a rise. So there's like an equality of the two, not just genders, but energies. So,
yeah, and I see so much imbalance right now. I wish that I would love to see more women, a balance in those spaces where people are making decisions. But I also think that there has to be a breakdown of the hierarchy that we're seeing right now. I don't see it as like levels. I see it as all us all on one plane,
Totally.
because we are all one. No one person is greater than another.
Totally. I agree 100%. And that's why we're seeing the Trumps, the Weinsteins, the whatever his name was. Like we're seeing all that junk come to the surface because it has to be shifted.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And because it's a almost like grasping on
right.
to that last straw,
Yeah.
before it falls.
Right. Because there's fear of letting that go. So yeah. And I, like you, want every woman who hears this podcast to know that their power lies inside them. That every little fragment of thought that says you're less than, it's time to shift that.
Mm. And it truly starts just with you. There's a quote that I'm not sure who said it, maybe it was you, but that there's nothing wrong with you, there's nothing to fix. You are perfect just as you are. The universe gave you everything you need in this moment as you are right now. And I think that often in the wellness space or the self help world, there's this product, that product. It's like you don't need any of it.
Nothing.
All you need to do is sit with yourself quietly.
100%. Yeah, you can spend billions of dollars on green smoothies and this diet and that diet and drive yourself crazy and convince something outside is going to fix you. Nothing will.
Exactly. And being a physician yourself, that if the mind isn't healthy, the body can't be healthy.
Exactly. Exactly. Because the nervous system isn't aligned to love.
Mm-hmm.
You've said it many times, love and laughter are the key. And it just one small thing to make you laugh undoes your whole day of fear. And if we don't give ourselves that, then fear will take over.
It's funny. Laughter is probably my favorite thing in the world.
I love it.
It's just like what naturally comes to me.
Yeah.
And I know some people laugh out of nervousness.
Right.
I hope I don't do that. I'm not, it's my genuine state.
Yeah.
So I want people to know that. And yeah, in my morning show, day-to-day job, I literally, as much as the news is important, what we're delivering, it's community-based news. But my intention is really to make people smile and to give them a moment of pause where maybe they can just have a bit of positivity, a bit of light in their day.
Totally. You do a great job at it because it's a tough job you have. And yet to bring it with some degree of love and general ease is a huge thing.
Yeah. It is. It is tough, but this knowing, this understanding, this path that I'm on right now, I don't know where it's going to take me. I don't know where this podcast is going to take me. I love the message that you shared with me earlier, and I hope that comes true. But right now, I'm just following my intuition one day at a time, and I find myself here with you, with overflowing love and gratitude. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Oh, you know what? I had